What if the one thing you've trusted your entire life, your logic, is the very thing keeping you trapped? Because here's the truth Darius discovered the moment he stepped out of his body. Logic is not intelligence. Logic is fear, wearing a suit. Logic was built by the body, for the body, to protect the body. Which means every rational decision you've ever made was secretly filtered through one question: will this keep me alive?
And that's why logic fails in real life. Because you are not the thing trying to survive. You are the thing that cannot die. The thing that existed before the body and will exist long after it dissolves.
Darius puts it this way: logic is the mind negotiating with its own fear. And once you see that, once you realize how small this system really is, you can't unsee it.
So stay with us until the end, because the insight we're about to show you is the one that cracks the entire illusion open, the moment where logic collapses and intuition finally wakes up.
Let's begin with the first blow to the logical mind, the reason logic fails before it even starts. Logic feels safe because it feels familiar. It gives you formulas, rules, steps, reasons, a sense of control in a world that constantly reminds you how fragile the body is.
But here's the glitch in the system. Logic was programmed by something terrified. It was built inside a creature that thought it could die. So every logical pattern you've ever learned was written from the perspective of a prisoner, trying not to lose the one thing it believes it has: its physical existence.
That's why logic obsesses over loss. That's why it panics over the future. That's why it clings to the past. Logic is the echo of a nervous system desperately scanning for danger.
And when your identity collapses into the body, logic becomes your God, the silent ruler that dictates your limits. It tells you who you can be, what you can attempt, and what you must avoid at all costs.
Darius calls this the logic of the prison, because a prison doesn't need bars. It only needs a belief sound strong enough that you never question it.
And nothing fortifies that prison more than the fear of death. Death is the axis around which the entire logical mind spins. Every argument it makes, every justification, condition, calculation, comes down to one core illusion: I must protect the body.
But here's the twist logic can't comprehend. You're not the body. You're the thing the body temporarily wraps itself around. And the moment you forget that, logic becomes your warden.
Which is why every fear-based construct, every manipulated religion, every system of control uses the same fuel: judgment, punishment, death. They weaponize logic to keep souls small enough to obey.
And when you die, logic doesn't stop. It follows you. Your final thoughts, your deepest fears, form the world you wake up in. Not because it's real, but because fear is the only thing powerful enough to distort what the soul sees.
This is why so many describe the hell realms. They're not places. They're projections. Mental architecture built from fear, trying to survive something that never needed protection.
Logic creates the prison. Fear locks the door. But the key is the one insight logic cannot process.
The insight that dissolves fear and collapses the entire illusion instantly.
Let's go to part 3, the truth your logical mind cannot handle. Your soul is more physical, more real, and more indestructible than your body. There is one insight, one realization that instantly breaks the entire structure of fear. And when Darius first experienced it, it shattered everything he thought he understood about reality.
Here it is. Your soul is more physical than your body. Not less, not abstract, not symbolic. More.
More solid, more structured, more present, more real. When Darius stepped out of his body, he didn't feel like a ghost. He felt like he finally returned to the real physical form he had forgotten.
And suddenly, every fear collapsed Because fear can only survive if you believe in loss. Loss of body, loss of identity, loss of control, loss of life. But how can you fear losing something that was never you in the first place?
The moment you perceive your soul body, your real body, you realize the physical world is the imitation, the copy, the slowed-down projection of a much denser, richer, faster reality. You don't float on the other side. You stand, you move, you feel weight, texture, gravity. Your presence has mass, your awareness has form, your intention has force. And with that realization, the fear of death dies because you finally see it for what it is, a misinterpretation of transition. Death is not an ending, it's a shift from the fake physical into the true physical.
And here's the part that destroys logic completely. You cannot be harmed. You cannot be imprisoned. You cannot be diminished. Not by systems, not by beliefs, not by the body, not even by your own mistakes. The soul is untouchable. The only prison that ever existed was the one you believed in.
And this is why logic fails, because logic was built inside a world of limits, a world of birth, decay, and death. It cannot understand eternity because it was never designed for eternity.
Intuition, on the other hand, is the memory of eternity, the way your soul communicates through the cracks of the mind. It is small at first, like a faint signal, but it expands the moment you trust it.
Because intuition isn't guessing. Intuition is remembering, the remembering of a being that has lived more lives than logic could ever count.
So if logic is fear's language, then intuition is the language of your soul. And once you feel the difference, you stop asking which one is right, because you already know.
Which leads us to the next part, the moment when intuition fully awakens, not as a mystical ability, but as the most natural expression of your authentic self. Let's go to part 4, the awakening of intuition and the return to your true identity. Once the illusion of the logical mind collapses, something completely different begins to rise, something quieter, older, and far more intelligent than thought, intuition.
People think intuition is mystical, or rare, or a talent only a few possess. But Darius says the opposite. He calls intuition the original operating system of the soul. It's not rare, it's buried. Not weak, just ignored.
And here's the strange thing. Intuition starts incredibly small. A whisper, a pull, a knowing you can't justify. It doesn't argue. It doesn't explain itself. It simply points. And if you follow that point, even once, it expands.
Because intuition isn't logical. Intuition is direct access to memory, to truth, to everything you've ever been, to everything that exists inside you but was filtered out by the body's fear.
This is why technology fascinates us. AI fascinates us. We look at machines that predict, calculate, generate, and think they're advanced. But Darius says they're just primitive shadows of what the soul can do effortlessly.
When you're out of the body, you don't analyze information. You know it, instantly, completely, perfectly. The entire universe becomes one accessible database because the soul isn't searching for truth. It is truth.
But here's the catch. You can't access intuition while clinging to logical identity. You can't receive a high-frequency signal on hardware built from fear.
So, the most direct way to awaken intuition is to detach from the importance of logic entirely. Drop the performance, drop the roles, drop the need to be right. Ask yourself one question. If nothing I did could be judged or punished, who would I be?
That answer, the raw, unfiltered version of you, is your intuitive self, your authentic self. The self that doesn't need validation, permission, or approval to exist.
Because intuition doesn't come from confidence. It comes from truth. And truth is effortless. Truth is silent. Truth is the soul remembering itself after lifetimes of pretending to be smaller than it is.
And when intuition awakens, you start moving differently. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop overthinking. You stop trying to fit into systems that were never designed for beings like you.
You start living from something deeper, something eternal, something unbreakable, something that no illusion can touch.
And this leads us to the final, most transformative truth of all, the purpose behind everything your soul came here to do.
Let's go to part 5, the liberation beyond logic, unconditional love, authenticity, and the fulfillment of your soul's purpose.
When the mind finally stops clinging to logic and the soul begins to speak again, something extraordinary happens. A feeling returns, a feeling you've been chasing your entire life without knowing its name. Wholeness.
Darius says wholeness isn't a goal, it's a memory. A state that was always there, waiting underneath the noise of thought, underneath the fear, underneath the identity the world taught you to wear.
And in that state, the soul remembers its true purpose. Not achievement, not mastery, not perfection, but unconditional love. Love without condition. Love without agenda. Love without fear.
Because the greatest pain the soul faces is not what was done to it, but the love it held back. The moments it stayed silent when it wanted to express. The times it hid when it wanted to expand. The places where fear overrode authenticity.
This is what people describe as the life review. Not judgment, not punishment, but clarity. The aching clarity of seeing every moment where love wanted to move through you and you didn't let it.
But here's the gift. Every moment of withheld love becomes the soul's fuel to return, to try again, to express more truth, more compassion, more authenticity than the lifetime before.
Because authenticity is not personality. It's not preference. It's not aesthetics. Authenticity is the soul unfiltered, the frequency you were designed to radiate without distortion.
And when you become that version of yourself, you stop trying to survive and start remembering who you are. A being that cannot die, a consciousness that cannot fracture, a presence that cannot be reduced to logic, fear, or flesh.
You realize that the universe doesn't want you perfect. It wants you true. And the more true you are, the more the universe expands through you.
Because creation depends on your authenticity. If you dim yourself, the universe loses a color. If you silence yourself, the universe loses a sound. If you shrink, the universe becomes smaller.
So, the liberation from logic isn't about becoming irrational. It's about becoming infinite. It's about letting intuition lead, letting authenticity breathe, and letting your soul finally say, "This is who I am." And once you feel that, once you taste what your soul really is, you stop living like you're temporary and start living like the eternal being you've always been.
Before you go, we want to ask you something. Not as viewers, but as souls remembering themselves.
What part of this episode felt like a memory instead of an idea? Was it the collapse of logic? The moment the soul stood outside the body? The awakening of intuition? Or the realization that you were never fragile?
Have you ever felt intuition speak before logic had time to interrupt? A pull, a knowing, a whisper that made no sense but felt absolutely right?
Have you ever had a dream or a moment of clarity where you felt more real than your physical body? Where you sensed a version of yourself that was older, wiser, and untouched by fear?
If something like that has ever happened to you, write it in the comments. not just to share, but because your experience might help someone else recognize their own.
And here's the question Darius asks to reveal your intuitive self instantly. If nothing you did could be judged or punished, who would you be?
Your answer to that one question may be the first time in years you speak with your soul instead of your mind.
If this episode shifted something inside you, a belief, a fear, a memory, don't stop here. Let this be the beginning.
There are 2 videos on your screen right now. Each one takes you deeper into the truth of who you are.
One continues the path of intuition, how consciousness creates reality, and how your soul moves through dimensions with effortless clarity.
The other reveals the actual mechanics of the soul, why you can't die, why you're more physical on the other side, and why fear collapses the moment you leave the body.
Choose the one that calls to you. Trust the pull. Click it. And continue the journey your soul brought you here to begin.
You're not remembering by accident. You're remembering because it's time.
This is the quantum soul, and your awakening has already started.